Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Hanford, and my wife, Danae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur.
On the podcast today, we have with us Stephen Woessner. He's the founder and CEO of Predictive ROI, a digital marketing agency. He's also an author of 3 best-selling books and a host of Onward Nation, a top-rated daily podcast for learning how today's top business owners think, act, and achieve. Stephen, thank you very much for being on with us, sitting down and talking with us. We are looking forward to talking to you today.
Well, Danae, thanks very much. And Dan, thank you too for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to being as helpful as I can to your audience.
Well, Stephen, can you walk us through a little bit about what your current focus is right now as an entrepreneur?
It's really distilled down into just one thing, and that's building and scaling my core business, which is Predictive ROI. And so my leadership team and I are hyper focused on, working with the right clients, being as helpful as we possibly can to our clients, providing our community, the Onward Nation community, with as much help and assistance that they need in order to build and scale, all of the information from our guests and so forth. So we're always looking for new and improved ways of sharing information and being helpful, and then building and scaling our business. So that is our focus. As you and I were talking about in the green room, I don't do a lot of speaking, at events, because that takes time away from scaling the business and being super helpful to clients. And so it's all about really helping this business community that we've had the privilege and honor to build around our podcast, and then building and scaling the company that serves that community.
Well, and I'm sure, Stephen, that along this journey that you've had as an entrepreneur and starting this podcast and your digital marketing agency and all of that, you've had some tough decisions that you've had to make along this way. And so one of the things I like to start off with, or I guess we like to start off with, if you will, is a tough decision that you made that sticks out in your mind as, like, I like to call it the sore thumb tough decision. It's one of those things that you look back and you go, yep, that is the one I learned a lot of lessons through. So I'm glad I went through it, but I definitely didn't make the right decision there. And so can you think of that one decision that you made that really sticks out to you?
Well, it was certainly a tough decision, although I think it's a decision that we had to make. And yeah, I mean, there were lessons galore, and none of them were easy, pills to swallow at first. And that's when, the business was probably about 3 years old at the time. And I spent a lot of time with Darren Hardy, who is then the publisher of Success Magazine. And my team and I before I met Darren, my team and I had already put the wheels in motion. We'd signed a contract with the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando, Florida. We had reserved 1,000 room nights. It was 325, people at an event for 3 nights. So we were under contract with the Ritz for 1,000 room nights, which is not inexpensive, as you might imagine. And so then I met Darren, and I enticed, persuaded, begged, cajoled for Darren to come onto our board of advisors, which he did. And then all of a sudden we're recruiting and inviting some really amazing speakers to come to the event. And so Gary Vaynerchuk signed on, Avinash Kaushik, who's a digital marketing evangelist at Google, had signed on, Don Yeager, Scott McCain, and just some other really notable speakers. And thankfully, many of them were my friends, but I didn't really know Gary very well at the time. But anyway, we put together this budget for this event that we were going to call, or we did call, Predictive ROI Live. And the budget was $2 million. And Darren said to me, one of our calls, he goes, "You're either the gutsiest person I know, or you're absolutely insane." And so we put together this $2 million budget. And I think we were selling seats for, I don't know, some ridiculous number, like $7,000 or something, like all in. It was all inclusive. I don't know. I mean, it was insane. We had no business putting that kind of price point on it. But anyway, it was going to be a lovely event. I mean, exclusive, just to the nines. It was fantastic. We invested a lot of time and effort to make that happen. Well, anyway, when we opened up the event for registration, we sold a grand total of 3 seats. All right, you can kind of envision when you've got a hall in the Ritz-Carlton for 325 people and 3 people buy tickets, it's going to be a problem. And so we ended up started scrambling, negotiating with the Ritz, to bring it all to fruition. We ended up having to cancel the event about 6 months out. It cost Predictive ROI about $200,000 in cash because of agreements, contracts, blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, praise God, the speakers, were all great about it because we canceled far enough in advance and Gary was able to get rebooked and everybody else and so forth. So that thankfully wasn't an issue. And many of them were friends of mine, so that was okay. But you talk about the embarrassment, right? And so, I had teammates who were not able to get out of bed because of how bad we all felt. I mean, it felt like, someone really close to us had passed away. And so the lessons out of that was something that Darren was trying to drill into me for a long time before that. And that was, why would somebody come to this? What's the value proposition? Who's the avatar? And I never answered the question. So I learned a very painful lesson. Avatar, value proposition, extremely important. And then he's like, you know what? You took a big swing. You're like a high school baseball player trying to swing with the Yankees. You missed. And so you lick your wounds and get back to building your business. And that in and of itself is also a very painful lesson, but an important one for most business owners.
You have touched on so many lessons that you can pull from this that we don't have enough time on this episode to really dive into each one of those. But I think one of the things that I would touch on the most, or it's one of the most important things here, is what you just said about your avatar. A lot of people don't really understand what that is. And so could you, from your standpoint and what you've learned in your knowledge base, talk to the listeners about what is an avatar and how can they make sure that they take the necessary steps to get that, nailed and kind of dialed in for their business?
Sometimes people will refer to avatar as a persona or whatever. There's a variety of different ways to refer to it. But essentially, it's this. It's really being able to understand the people that you want to attract into your community, into your business as clients, whatever, being able to understand them at an emotional level. And I don't mean the kind of sit around a campfire and sing Kumbaya, that kind of stuff. That's not what I mean. What I mean is like really truly understanding what their pain points are, what their challenges are, why they're frustrated with their current supply chain or their current suppliers or current vendors. Who is it that they want to really impress and why? And what is it that they hate, absolutely hate about your industry? Not about you, but about your industry. And if you could do something really, really big, like some sort of result outcome, like what would you be willing to guarantee? And then in the process, what would they be willing to pay more for because you did? And then ultimately being able to answer the question, like, if they come up to you and say, you would gain my trust and comfort by, and then being able to answer that question on behalf of your avatar. If you can do all of those things and truly understand your avatar or the person that you're trying to serve, if you can truly understand them from an emotional perspective, and then when you're sending out an email and you're sending out a Facebook post and you write it for Sally, that's the name of our avatar, by the way. And if you write it for Sally, then when Sally gets that email, she feels like you wrote it for her because you did. But most people think, I'm going to send a letter or an email out to my 20,000 people, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to get this conversion rate or whatever. And they completely miss the point that it's not about 20,000 people. It's about Sally. And when you can get that right, then that's when relationship actually starts.
Stephen, why do you think that so many entrepreneurs struggle to get that piece of their business in place?
I think it's because most people are in a hurry and don't really have the patience. And building a business is hard. Building a business is going to take a long time. And there's so much crap out on Facebook right now about, I'm an expert in such and blah, blah, and buy my course for this and that. And there's so much of that I think everybody's gotten into a hurry that I need to be running a 7-figure business because, Joe Schmuckatelli over there says that he's running a 7-figure and he's 24 years old. And how is that even possible? I don't know, but I'm 37 and I'm not running a 7. And then all of a sudden we get lost in this hysteria as opposed to actually slowing down and thinking, okay, how can I be helpful to Sally? How can I learn from my relationship with Sally and build a business over time where I not only serve many Sallys, but I also build a great team and invest in the culture and I care about them as people and they're really great teammates and so forth. Like, how can I build a business over a long period of time that, really sinks in with my values and so forth? And that's not reading 2 books at Barnes & Noble and deciding you're an expert in whatever topic and curating somebody else's knowledge. That takes time, just like fine wine, whiskey, whatever. It takes time.
Well, and I think also that the avatar, you can definitely put that in place and nail that down and start working. But based on my experience, I think the avatar is something that you're constantly learning about too. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Sally's teaching us new things every single day. Mm-hmm. I mean, that might be an exaggeration, but often, right? She's teaching us great, valuable lessons. And by the way, we invite Harry, the male counterpart to Sally, just because I like the movie, that's Sally. We invite Harry and Sally as guests on our show. Why? Because Onward Nation is sort of our laboratory to learn more and more about Harry and Sally so that we can be of better service to them. Because that's why we exist. We exist to take great care of Harry and Sally.
I want to know what that guy's name again is that you saw on Facebook.
John Schmuckatelli?
John Schmuckatelli.
Yeah, and his cousin, Vinny Bag of Donuts. And they're just, I am so, like, info marketing. I don't have anything against it. I mean, heck, we're releasing a course next month, that's tied to the book, Profitable Podcasting. Awesome. But it's based on years and years and years of experience of producing thousands and thousands and thousands of episodes, right? And helping clients build their business through the power of podcasting. It's based on all of that. It drives me crazy when somebody just throws out a course and they've never done it. Ugh, it drives me nuts.
I'm going to probably steal that from you and start using that. Schmuckatelli. Okay. Let's just pivot a little bit. I think it's going downhill pretty quickly from my end. You guys seemed like you were doing a pretty good job there. Mine was kind of going the other direction because I was laughing too much on the back end. I think I had to press a mute button because I was laughing so hard. Anyway, so moving right along here, let's talk about a tough decision that you had to make along this journey that you've been on. It really had a really good positive outcome, or maybe even an outcome that you just weren't expecting, but it just was really good and it sticks out in your mind and some of the lessons you learned through it.
Yeah, I think that decision was on May 15th, 2015, when I'm sitting at my dining room table in my house and I'm looking outside and everything looks all right in the world. My daughter's playing with her friends down at the neighborhood park and things are good, except inside the house, I'm feeling all the pain and pressure of not being able to make payroll because we just lost a client. And like, where am I going to scrape it together? And thankfully we did, without issue, but still it's like I'm feeling the pain and pressure of that because we're overstaffed. And ironically, Predictive ROI, is a content marketing lead gen agency, but we were doing a really terrible job of that for ourselves. And so I fire off this email to our team and I say, you know what, we're going to launch a daily podcast and it's going to be called Onward Nation. We're going to interview some of the best business owners on the planet, how they think, act, and achieve. That's our business development strategy, which obviously is not much of a business development strategy. And so I'm like, we're going to launch in 30 days. And we did. A lot of pain and suffering. We knew nothing about podcasting at that point. And so we launched it and it was really painful. It was a very tough decision. And it has completely reinvented the way that we do business. It has completely reinvented Predictive ROI. It has introduced us to a brand new network of people that we never would have known otherwise. I mean, it has changed every aspect of our company for the better. And it's not all peaches and cream. Nothing is. But
what made you think about podcasting at that time?
I had owned the domain onwardnation.com for about 12 months. Didn't know really what I was going to do with it. And I had recently, I think it was probably maybe 6 months or something before that, I was a guest of JLD's on EO Fire, had a great experience. And that was my grand total really of experience on podcasting, was being a guest on EO Fire. And that was fun. And I'm like, I think I could probably swing that. I don't know. But really, I had no business choosing a podcast. So I think it was a bit of divine intervention too, because it was like that touch of the spirit or something of, hey, you should do this. And I did it. I felt so compelled that we were going to do it. And kudos to my team. Because there's no way, I mean, there's no logical way that any team of inexperienced people in that sort of tech would have the success of being able to launch the show that we did. And they deserve every single ounce of credit for that.
Wow. I know for us, the reasons and things like that, we created the podcast, and there's so many different reasons that we've interviewed several people that have their own podcast. And I think, one of the things that, a lot of businesses nowadays don't understand about podcasting is that they can really use it to their advantage to be able to, reach their primary, like you said, avatar,
Right.
to try to, inviting those people onto the podcast and kind of creating that connection and that relationship, because in any type of sales process, the people that know and like and trust you, which through your podcast you can do, those are the types of people you want to do business with. And that's why I think podcasting is so powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree with you for everything that you just said there. Absolutely.
And that's the thing is a lot of people, we do training videos in our offices for just residual training on various things and new hires and things like that. And, we had this one person that just decided that they really didn't want to help us do some of these recordings. And, they didn't really tell us that. They just didn't do it. Took 4 months, for them to come around to telling us something, or us to finally find us out that it wasn't that they didn't want to help us. They were wanting to help us, but they didn't want to be on video, And so that's another level and layer that, I think a lot of people that they see people on YouTube and things like that on Facebook videos and, the schmuckatellis and all that kind of stuff. And I told you I would start using it. And they don't really want to have their face out there. And this is also another way that they can use a platform like podcasting to reach that target market. So I really, really, loving the podcasting, and we're going to be taking it to the next level and doing some live interviewing with some people and putting it on YouTube and doing some things like that around the country and hopefully around the world as we grow it, and actually going into some brick and mortar locations and sitting down and, with these business owners and really diving deep into the different nuances of their businesses.
Awesome.
Stephen, talk a little bit about your strategies that you use when you are faced with a difficult decision. How do you approach that decision? What's your way of thinking through the options and coming to an actual making a choice?
Great question. I think it depends on what the particular situation is, but, just kind of, overarching more high level, I really love what Stephen Covey wrote in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with approaching it from a win-win. And then using the synergy between the people who, are the decision makers to find, what he describes as being the third alternative. And so, we do that. We do that here within Predictive ROI. How can this be a win-win decision for our team? How can this be a win-win decision for clients? How can this be a win-win for whomever the stakeholders are? So I think when you do that, and you do that within an environment where everybody trusts each other, everybody knows that there's not some hidden card up somebody's sleeve, trying to manipulate or whatever to get the right outcome. So when the intent is pure, then I think that win-win is the right way to approach decisions, because everybody can walk away and feel good about what happened. In fact, Stephen Covey goes so far to say it's win-win or no deal. And I like that a lot.
That's a real paradigm shift, because it keeps you from focusing on a positive or a negative, but there's another alternative there where it's positive for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it's usually there. We just have to put on our creativity and kind of set our ego aside and find it. But it's generally there if we're willing to actually look for it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our show sponsors. When we come back, we're going to talk to Stephen about some of his favorites as it relates to his business.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com.
All right, we are back, and we're talking with Stephen Woessner, and we're going to be talking to him about his favorites in business in a series of questions we call the trifecta. So to start us off, talk to us a bit about your most favorite technology that you use in business, Stephen, that helps make your life easier.
Oh, gosh, boy, there's a bunch. But, I'm also actually pretty simple, too, as far as, I'm pretty old school. I mean, I have when friends, family, whatever, get a hold of my iPhone, they're like, that's all you have installed on the thing? Yeah, I mean, there just really isn't a lot of stuff. And so, but one of the tools that I really do love is an app called Wunderlist, and it's spelled with a U, so Wunderlist. I love it. And it syncs across, my iPhone to my MacBook to my iPad. And it's a great way to keep track of task lists, which I'm a big task list person. And I just love the, checking something off and it makes a little ding. And, because I like to get things done. So I guess in the area of tech, I'd say that.
Stephen, what is a favorite quote that you've heard that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
Greatness is available to all of us if we're willing to do the common things uncommonly well. So I learned that from one of my mentors, Don Yeager, who learned it through 12 years of in-person mentorship with the late coach John Wooden. And I think it just really exemplifies everything from Coach about doing those common things over and over and over again, doing them better than anybody else. And that leads to greatness if we're consistent and patient over time.
And what is a favorite book that you've read that's helped you either with your decision-making or in how you approach your business in general?
Gosh, there's a bunch. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now and it's packed full of, lots of knowledge from some really great authors. I think the book that really, really stands out for me is like right next to my copy of the Bible is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I guess, it's funny, I'm just now noticing it as I look at my bookshelf, and those two actually go pretty well together for me. But I think that Stephen Covey did an exceptional job of making it such a principle-centered book. Maybe that's why it sold almost 30 million copies. And it's phenomenal. Everyone on our team has read it. We've studied it together. And it really kind of is the undercoating, I guess, of Predictive.
What is the next thing for you, Stephen, right now as an entrepreneur that's on your vision or your dream board?
Yeah, for me, and I should say for me, for my leadership team and me, it's pretty simple. It's, we work really hard on a weekly, quarterly basis, yearly basis, I guess, to work toward our 3-year vision and our 10-year vision. And we've been executing against that for a while now. And so, that's what we're super focused on is, how we're scaling the business and what it looks like in 3 years. What do we need to do between now and then? We're about a year into that new 3-year vision that we created about a year or so ago. And what adjustments do we need to make? So really, it's not about, I want to have that fancy thing, or I want to cruise the Caribbean or whatever that are kind of like the photogenic, vision boards that are pretty popular. That isn't us. It doesn't really align with who we are as a business. And so we're super, super focused about creating the right company that we see, that we envision over the next couple of years.
How can the listeners reach out to you to, start to follow you and listen to your podcast, or maybe reach out to you somehow and contact you if you have any further questions after they hear what you did episode today?
Well, everything's at predictiveroi.com. So, all of our episodes are there. My stuff is there. It's just kind of like our central repository for everything. So all nearly 800 episodes of Onward Nation are there. You're certainly welcome to look me up on LinkedIn. And in fact, I think that's how the three of us actually connected, through LinkedIn, yes, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So either LinkedIn or predictiveroi.com.
Awesome. And I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us today. And I look forward to having you on a future episode as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur as well.
Well, thank you both very, very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure to spend some time with you and your audience, and I hope it was helpful. And if anybody has any questions, they can always hit me up. I'm happy to answer them. But thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.